In this lesson, we will implement the prompt history feature. That feature lets us insert the previous prompt in the prompt buffer with the keystrokes meta-p and meta-n. In this section, we are going to define the commands chatgpt-previous and chatgpt-next. In the future, those commands are going to replace the content of the current buffer with respectively the previous prompt and the next prompts, but for now, they are just going to print in the echo area respectively prev prompt and next prompt. So we evaluate the first expression which defines chatgpt-previous, which jumps to the next expression. We evaluate it also which defines the command chatgpt-next, and now we are going to bind meta-p and meta-n to those commands in chatgpt-mode-map. So we go into that body of the definition of chatgpt-mode-map, and we replace Ctrl+C by meta-p, mp for meta-p, and we bind that to chatgpt-previous. Okay, we passed that below. Now we replace previous by next, and we replace -p by -n. We evaluate that whole expression which we define chatgpt-mode-map, and now we are going to try that in the prompt buffer. So we call chatgpt command, we are in the prompt buffer, and we are going to call first chatgpt-mode to take into account the new changing in chatgpt-mode-map. So we evaluate that, and now if we press meta-p, we see in the echo area that we have prev prompt, and if we press meta-n, we see in the echo area that we have next prompt. In this section, we introduce the variable chatgpt-history, which is the ring of the request directories. We set it to an empty ring to start with, so we evaluate that expression which defines chatgpt-history as an empty ring, and each time we send a request to OpenAI, we want to add the request directory of that request to that ring. So to do that, we define the function chatgpt-push that we see here, and we use the function chatgpt-insert+extend that we've used previously. We insert into chatgpt-history ring, and we insert rect dir. And the true at the end is we recall to extend the ring. So we evaluate that expression which defines chatgpt-push, but now we need to call that function in the function chatgpt-send request. So let's jump to the definition of chatgpt-send request, and we go here. We see that we print in the echo area the request directory. We write the request into disk. We also write the timestamp, and now we are going to call that function, and we want to call it with rect dir. We evaluate that expression which redefine chatgpt-send request. Before we continue, let's just check ring elements, and we want to check the element of chatgpt-history to see that this is an empty ring. So we have an empty ring. Now we call chatgpt command, and in the prompt buffer we write foo1, and we are going to press Ctrl+C to send it. So we send that prompt, we got a response, and now let's go back into the mini buffer and see if the chatgpt-history changed, the ring changed. So we list its elements, and we see now we have one request directory in it, and let's do again that operation. Foo2 in the prompt buffer, we send it with Ctrl+C, we get a response. We jump into the mini buffer again, and we list the elements in the chatgpt-history ring, and we see that now we have two request directories in that ring. Now we can redefine the command chatgpt-previous such that instead of printing in the echo area prev prompt, we are going to update the prompt in the prompt buffer with a previous prompt. Specifically, we are going to update that prompt buffer with the prompt of the request that we did previously to the request with the directory chatgpt request dir. chatgpt request dir is a new variable that we introduced right now that holds the request directory of the current prompt. We evaluate that expression to set that variable to nil. Nil means there's no current prompt in the prompt buffer, and this happens each time we send a request to OpenAI. We are going to set that a little bit after in chatgpt-push function. But for now, let's look at the definition of chatgpt-previous. First, we bind the variable recdir to the previous request directory. So this is what we did. If chatgpt request dir is nil, we use ring ref to get the last inserted element in chatgpt history ring, so the last request that we send. If chatgpt request dir is not nil, we are going to use ring next to get the request that we sent previously to that chatgpt request dir. So now that we have rec dir set, we can use it to get the request as an Emacs Lisp object in the variable rect. To do that, we insert in the temporary buffer the request.json file corresponding to rec dir directory, and we parse it with chatgpt JSON ring. Next, with that request and using map nested element function, we can get the prompt of that request. Before we do anything in the prompt buffer, we set chatgpt request dir with the new request directory rec dir, such that the next time we call chatgpt-previous, we will navigate in chatgpt history and get another previous prompt. So in the prompt buffer, what we do now is that we erase it totally, so it is empty, and after we insert the prompt, and the macro save excursion is just to get the point at the beginning of the buffer. So now we evaluate that whole expression, which define or redefine chatgpt-previous, and now we are going to test it. We call chatgpt. In the prompt buffer, we are going to press meta-p, which call chatgpt-previous, and we see that the prompt has been updated to the last corresponding to the last request that we send. Let's take a look at the variable chatgpt, and we want to request dir. So we see that this has been set to some request directory. Now we call again meta-p, which called chatgpt-previous. This updated the prompt buffer with a new prompt, foo1, which corresponds to a previous request. And if we look again in the mini buffer to the variable chatgpt request dir, we see that this has been set to another request directory. And if we look as we ring elements, so we press return, we see that we have only two elements, two request directories in that list. So if we press again meta-p, we will wraps in that ring and get again foo2. So let's do that. We press meta-p and we update it to foo2. Now, last thing that we need to do is to, in chatgpt-push, each time we send a request, we add the request directory to chatgpt history, and now we also want to set chatgpt request dir to nil. So we evaluate that expression. Now we call chatgpt. We are going to send the request with the prompt foo3. So let's do that. We got a response. Now we jump again in chatgpt with the command chatgpt into the prompt buffer. And now let's have a look to the variable chatgpt request dir, and it should be nil. So we press and we get a nil. And now if we press meta-p, we will get the previous prompt, the prompt of the last request that we sent, which should be foo3. So let's press meta-p. We get foo3. Let's press meta-p again. We get foo2, and this is working as we want. Great, we got the command chatgpt-previous to work well, but what happens if chatgpt history ring is empty? Let's find out. we evaluate that expression which sets ChatGPT history to an empty ring. We call ChatGPT. In the prompt buffer, we press meta-p and we see an error in the echo area which says accessing an empty ring. So this is an error, but it's not that helpful. So we are going to change that a little bit in chatgpt-previous function. So we add a if ring empty. If the ring ChatGPT history is empty, we are going to print the following message, which can be ChatGPT history empty. Send a request first. Okay, so we evaluate that expression, which we define chatgpt-previous. So now we call ChatGPT. In the prompt buffer, we press meta-p, and we got a message that is a little bit more helpful, which says ChatGPT history empty, send a request first. So let's do that. So foo for, we press Ctrl+C, Ctrl+C to send that request. We got a response, and now we call ChatGPT. We are in the prompt buffer, and meta-p should work. Meta-p, and this updated the prompt buffer with the prompt of the last request, which is foo for. So far, the request directory listed in ChatGPT history ring are those of requests that we've sent during that Emacs session. But what about the requests that we've sent in other sessions and that are saved on disk in ChatGPT directory? We are going in that section to initialize the variable ChatGPT history with the request directories of the requests that we've sent previously in other session. So to do that, we are going to evaluate that expression which set ChatGPT request dir to nil, the same way as if we were loaded that package at Emacs startup. And we do the same with the variable ChatGPT history. So we evaluate that expression which set ChatGPT history to the empty ring. Now we call ChatGPT, and to have it work the way we want, as the first time that we start ChatGPT in a new session, we are going to kill the prompt buffer. So we kill that buffer, and now this is if we were started calling ChatGPT for the first time after starting a session. So now let's take a look at that new function, ChatGPT history set. So this is a function that say, okay, if a ChatGPT directory exists, what we are going to do is to set the variable ChatGPT history to a ring that we get by converting the sequence of ChatGPT request directories that we get with the function ChatGPT request that we've defined in a previous lesson. So we evaluate that that expression which defines ChatGPT history set, and now what we want to do is to call that variable in ChatGPT mode. So we remember that ChatGPT mode is called only once when we call ChatGPT for the first time in an Emacs session, or when more specifically when ChatGPT the prompt buffer doesn't exist yet. So we evaluate that expression which redefines ChatGPT mode, and now we are going to call ChatGPT command. We are in the prompt buffer, and if we evaluate in the mini buffer ChatGPT, not this one but history, so this one, we should have a bunch of request directories, because we've set that ring with all the requests that we've sent in the previous lesson. Not all these lessons, but the one about the history. So now let's call meta-p, and we will cycle in the ChatGPT history ring. So meta-p, foo4, foo3, foo2, foo1, baz, bar, foo, and normally we are back to foo4. So that's it for the initialization of the variable ChatGPT history. Finally, we are going to rename the command chatgpt-previous to chatgpt-prompt. We are going to change its signature and add it an argument called direction, and we are going to modify its body to cover both cases, chatgpt-previous and chatgpt-next. And at the end, we are going to define chatgpt-previous and chatgpt-next using that new function chatgpt-prompt. So let's do that. We rename chatgpt-previous to chatgpt-prompt. We pass it an argument that we call direction, which can be previous or next. We change its docstring, no longer previous but direction. We look for the call to ring next, and this is right there that we are going to branch on the direction. So we do that if the direction is equal to previous. We do the same as before. We call ring next. We copy that expression, and if this is not the case, we want to call ring previous, like that. So we evaluate that whole expression, which defines the function chatgpt-prompt. Now we are going to modify chatgpt-next. In chatgpt-next, we call chatgpt-prompt, the new function that we've defined right now, with the symbol next. We evaluate that expression which defines chatgpt-next, and we are going to copy that function, that command. We rename it previous, the copy. We change the body of, no, not the body, but the docstring with next prompt. And we also want to change the argument that we pass to chatgpt-prompt, that we call previous, like that. So we evaluate also that expression which defines chatgpt-previous. Now we call chatgpt. We are in the prompt buffer, and we are going to press meta-p and meta-n to see if this is working correctly. So we start with meta-p. Well, great, foo4, meta-p, foo3, meta-p, foo2. Now let's try meta-n to check if chatgpt-next works well. Meta-n, and we get foo3, meta-n, we get foo4, and everything is working, and we have implemented the prompt history feature. Next time we will see how to implement a waiting widget that is displayed in the mod line while we are waiting for a response from OpenAI.